Beware the Backwash, Chapter 1. It appeared out of nowhere. One day the old storefront next to Barrow's Hardware was empty and dust-caked. The next, there was a gleaming wooden sign above the door in swirling forest green letters. Eco Squeeze Juice Bar, Grand Opening, August 9th. The shop window was completely soaped up, smeared in thick white swirls so no one could see inside. Not a soul in town had seen anyone go in or out. Not even Mrs. Tolliver, who saw everything and had binoculars for bird watching. People talked, of course. That's all folks in Sunny Pines ever did when something new showed up. "Health drinks," Mr. Barrow said with a scoff. "Phooey, give me a root beer float." But the sign stayed up. The door remained locked. The window stayed soaped. Then, a week later, on August 9th, a new sign was taped to the glass in bold red letters. Open. Come in. Taste something new. But the window still soaped. Larry Bixby sat across the street with his back against a telephone pole, his old gray pack-sack sagging at his feet. He stared at the shop without really seeing it. That was just how he stared at most things lately. 10th grade was starting soon. His best friend had moved away. His mom was barely around. And today, he just didn't feel like going home. The sun was too bright, the sidewalk too hot, the air too loud. Then he saw the sign. Open. Come in. Something about it pulled at him. Maybe it was the weirdness. Maybe it was the boredom. Or maybe it was the way the letters looked like they were written in wet paint, still dripping. Before he realized what he was doing, Larry was on his feet. He slung his pack over one shoulder, crossed the street, and reached for the shop's handle. The door creaked as it opened, sounding more like a sigh than a welcome. A soft chime jingled overhead. Inside it was cool, too cool. The air smelled faintly of oranges and something else, something bitter. The shop was dimly lit, wooden counters, a row of strange, antique-looking blenders, menus scrawled in looping, uneven handwriting on chalkboards behind the counter. Then a voice came from the shadows. "Well now, a first visitor, and right on time." Larry froze as a tall man emerged from a dark doorway behind the counter. His apron was blinding white. He moved with a slow, sliding sort of grace. His skin gleamed unnaturally, shiny, almost slimy. His hair was thick, black, and combed straight back. His teeth, when he smiled, were crooked and yellowed, like corn kernels left too long in the field. But somehow that crooked smile made Larry feel calm, even warm. Instantly charmed, he smiled back. "Welcome, welcome," the man said. "I'm Mr. Quench. This is my place." Larry gave a slow nod. He felt like his voice might not work. Mr. Quench extended a hand. Larry hesitated, then shook it. The man's hand was cool and dry, but what really got him were the fingers. His third and fourth fingers were exactly the same length. Not a little close, identical. Mr. Quench rubbed his hands together quickly. The sound made Larry wince. It hissed, sharp and snake-like, like something ready to strike. "Rough day," came a smooth, syrupy voice. Larry sniffed and shrugged. "It's just stuff." Mr. Quench's smile stretched a little too wide, a little too polished. "Well, stuff can weigh a kid down. Good thing I have just the thing." Larry's eyes moved to the chalkboard menus. his brow furrowed. Anger cooler for tempers that boil. Willpower shake. Break that sugar craving. Luckberry punch. Quit the slots, start fresh. Blue sky squeeze. Sadness gone in a gulp. Larry blinked. He pointed at the last one. That one, the blue one. Mr. Quench nodded slowly, already pulling bottles and scooping powders from beneath the counter. Smart choice. It's my specialty. First-timers always love it. But I have something even better for you. A custom beverage. Now, you've got money, I assume. Larry pulled a crumpled $5 bill from his pocket and flattened it on the counter. Quench examined it like it was a used tissue. Not quite enough. But I'm flexible. We'll call it half cash. He leaned closer. His eyes were very blue, too blue, like cracked ice under glass. And half in trade. Larry shifted. Trade? A small deed, Quench whispered. Simple, helpful, nothing painful, just a little favor. I've just opened up. I'm new in town. I could use some advertising. Before Larry could answer, the man handed him the drink. Larry hesitated. What's in it? Oh, just a blend of kindness, clarity, and a special ingredient I save for the truly blue, Mr. Quench said, eyes gleaming. Want a taste? Larry reached for the cup. The cup was cold. The juice inside shimmered like melted sapphires. Larry hesitated. Then he took a sip. Sweet, tart, bubbly, like blueberry candy mixed with honey and something sharp like pine needles. He blinked. Then he was standing in the middle of a green field. Grass swayed under his cleats. A bat rested in his hand. The sun was low, golden. He was laughing, running, breathing deep. No sadness, no heaviness. Only air, joy, and sunlight. He swung the bat and heard the perfect crack. The ball soared. He was running the bases, first, second, third, heart thudding, the field spinning around him in the best way. He took another gulp, then another, and another. For a whole minute, he drank, savoring every drop, the taste, the feeling, the warmth spreading through him. Then, Mr. Quench gently took the cup from his hand, eyeing the small bit left at the bottom. Careful, he said with a grin. You shouldn't drink too much. Not on your first visit. Larry's head was foggy. What just happened? Just a taste of what you've been missing, Quench replied, setting the cup aside. Now, about that trade. You live on Birch Street, don't you? Larry nodded slowly. Good. Do you know a Mrs. Smith? Older woman, 2 cats, always wears pink. I think so. Mr. Quench smiled wider. Good. All I need is for you to get a message from her. She likes to leave me notes for her orders. Larry blinked again. The world felt tilted. The next thing he knew, he was outside, walking home. The sun was lower. His hands were sticky from the juice. His heart felt light. He couldn't remember what Mr. Quench had asked him to do. Not even a word. Chapter 2. It started with a whisper. That's how all weird things begin in Sunny Pines. A whisper in a grocery store aisle. A whisper over the fence. A whisper from a mom at the school pickup line who suddenly had that wide, slightly too happy smile and said things like, You simply must try the beetberry blend, but don't drink it all. Quench says it's important to leave some in the bottom. He says the flavors become bitter, and he'll really whisk that cup away from you. How charming. In less than a week, Eco Squeeze went from a mystery to a full-on obsession. No ads, no flyers, no phone number. Just a glowing, open sign in the window and a chalkboard outside that changed every morning, handwritten with the same swirly green letters. Today's featured cures: envy eliminator, for jealousy that won't quit; craving cleanse, beat that sweet tooth; anger cooler, turn down the heat; personal invitation to all from Mr. Quench. And people lined up. It wasn't a huge line, not like Black Friday at the outlet mall, but it was steady. Grown-ups mostly. Folks who normally wouldn't be caught dead slurping kale smoothies were suddenly sipping brightly colored drinks from paper cups with Eco Squeeze stamped in raised letters. And they looked good doing it. Happy, clear-eyed, like they'd just come back from a vacation where nothing went wrong. But they were never allowed to finish a drink. Quench made sure that his clients never tasted the bitter bottom of the glasses. Maggie Rivera noticed first. Their neighbor, Mr. Tolliver, had been feuding with his other neighbor over a tree root for the last 5 years. He'd called the city twice, filed a complaint, and even once threatened to chop the whole stinking thing down with a steak knife. But last Tuesday, he was in his yard, smiling, watering the grass, whistling. And the neighbor? She was sitting on her porch drinking something blue through a bendy straw. "I don't like it," Maggie muttered, peeking through the curtains. Her brother Jake was slouched on the couch, working on his third bowl of cereal. "Don't like what?" "That. Look at them. They're being weird." Jake rolled his eyes. "Maybe they made up." Maggie squinted harder. "They've hated each other since before we were born. People don't just get over a blood feud because of juice." Jake shrugged and kept eating. But Maggie wasn't the only one who noticed the town's mood shifting. At school, teachers stopped assigning homework. Kids got away with stuff they never would have before: spitballs, pranks, skipping gym. Even Principal Daniels, who once gave detention for untucked shirts, had been seen slouching in his office chair with a half-empty smoothie labeled Serenity Sipper. At first, it seemed great, like the whole town had taken a chill pill. Parents weren't yelling, traffic slowed, even the grumpy guy at the DMV smiled once. But it didn't take long before the weird turned really weird. Friday afternoon, Jake and Maggie were walking home from school when they saw Mrs. Eberly, the 4th grade math teacher, dancing on her front lawn. Not just dancing, twirling, arms in the air, eyes closed, like she was at some kind of outdoor rave. Her feet were bare, her hair was loose, and she was definitely singing to a song that didn't exist. In her hand was a paper cup. Eco Squeeze. "What the heck?" Jake said, slowing down. "Is she okay?" Maggie whispered. They paused at the edge of the yard, watching her spin. She didn't seem hurt. She didn't seem all there, either. When she noticed them, she smiled. Not the usual tight-lipped school smile, a huge, dreamy grin. "I can hear the colors," she said. Jake grabbed Maggie's sleeve. "Nope, let's go." They speed-walked the rest of the way home. The next morning, the mailman delivered flyers door to door. Except he wasn't wearing his usual uniform. He had a Hawaiian shirt on, sunglasses, and a new buzz cut. "Check this out," Jake said, picking up the flyer from the porch. "Eco Squeeze Juice Bar. First week free Friday. 1 free vice cure per person. Limit 1 per soul. Results may vary. Maggie read the last line aloud. Limit 1 per soul? Jake gave a low whistle. That's not ominous at all. Maggie looked toward Main Street. We should go. Jake raised an eyebrow. To the cursed smoothie shop? We need to know what's happening. And I want to see him. The guy. Mr. Quench. Jake thought about it. He didn't want to go. But something about the name. Quench. It sounded like water hitting fire. Like something dangerous pretending to be nice. Fine, he said, but we don't drink anything. They arrived at Eco Squeeze just after noon. The shop glowed like a warm summer campfire. Wood-paneled walls, hanging lanterns, and the scent of citrus and something else, earthy and strange. A soft chime jingled as they stepped inside. There were only 3 customers, a sleepy-eyed high school girl sipping something yellow, a construction worker with juice on his mustache, and Mrs. Langtree, the town librarian, dancing a little too much to the soft music. Behind the counter stood Mr. Quench. Tall, slicked-back hair, that weird symmetrical face, blue eyes that didn't blink quite enough, and his fingers. Maggie nudged Jake. Look at his hands, she whispered. Jake stared. Yep, ring and middle finger, same length. That wasn't normal. Welcome, young explorers, Mr. Quench said warmly. First time? They nodded. He leaned forward, his teeth yellow, but somehow not gross. Curious about what we do here? Just looking, Jake said quickly. Of course, Quench said. We all look, but sometimes what we find looks back. He turned and began pulling bottles from under the counter. Let me guess, he said. Stress from school? Parents not listening? Feeling like the world's a little heavier than it used to be? Jake blinked. How did you... Drink? Quench interrupted, sliding 2 bright paper cups onto the counter. On the house. First week free Friday. Jake hesitated. Maggie stepped forward, trying to stay calm. What's in them? Only what you need, Quench said. Nothing more. Jake picked his up and sniffed. It smelled like candy canes and pine needles. Maggie sniffed hers, berries, and something sharp, like ozone before lightning. Remember not to finish it completely, Quench said. There are many vitamins and minerals in this ambrosia. It's best to just taste before we find what you really like. She set it down. We're good, thanks. Quench's smile never faded. Suit yourselves. But if you ever want to be free of it all, you know where to find me. They left fast. Once outside, Maggie exhaled. He's not normal. No kidding. And the drinks? I wanted to drink mine. Like, really wanted to. Jake nodded slowly. That's how it starts. They watched from across the street as 2 more people entered the juice bar. One left minutes later, eyes wide, walking like a dreamer. I think he's hypnotizing people, Maggie said. Maybe worse. They looked up. The chalkboard sign now read, Today's special, Lust Redux, for secret crushes that won't go away. Jake turned away. We have to stop this. Maggie's jaw tightened. First, we find out how he's doing it. That night, Maggie pulled out the old binoculars from her closet, the same ones she used for birdwatching, or spying on neighbors, whichever came first. She set up in her bedroom window, watching the storefront of Eco Squeeze. Hours passed. Lights flickered. At 11:22 p.m., the sign flipped to closed. But at 11:35 p.m., 3 people slipped inside. All adults, all twitchy. And inside, the lights turned green, just for a moment. Down the hall, Jake was scribbling in his notebook. People feel better after drinking his stuff, but it doesn't last. They always come back. Drinks have names tied to emotions or sins. Why does he always collect the leftovers? Quench is collecting something. He tapped his pencil, then circled one word. Backwash? He stared at it. Why had Quench said not to finish the drink? What was in that last sip? Meanwhile, at Eco Squeeze, Mr. Quench smiled as the last customer of the night took their final sip. The man wiped his mouth, dazed. Quench took the cup gently, tilting it under the light. There it was, the shimmer at the bottom. He poured it into a tall jar labeled Envy/Spite. The liquid hissed. He corked it, shelved it, and whispered to it, "Grow strong, little sin. Your time is near." Chapter 3. It started with the pancakes. On Saturday mornings, Mrs. Rivera always made pancakes. Not the frozen kind either, real ones, fluffy, golden, stacked high with sliced bananas and chocolate chips, syrup in a little pitcher on the side. It was tradition. That's why, when Sam and Maggie stumbled into the kitchen and saw their mom just sitting at the table, staring at the wall, something felt immediately wrong. Mom?" Maggie asked. Mrs. Rivera didn't move. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Her hands were limp in her lap. Sam stepped closer. "You okay?" Still nothing. Then suddenly her head jerked up like a puppet on a string. She blinked, smiled. "Oh, morning, sweethearts," she said brightly. "Cereal's in the cabinet." Sam and Maggie exchanged a look. No pancakes? She'd never skipped pancakes. Mrs. Rivera stood, humming tunelessly, and wandered into the living room. The TV flicked on. She sat down and started watching a static-filled shopping channel with a glassy-eyed smile. Maggie whispered, "What just happened?" Sam opened the cereal box. It was empty. No clue, but I think something's wrong with her. They left the house and biked toward town. The air felt weird, thicker than usual, like a storm was coming, but the sky was clear. The breeze didn't feel like a breeze. It felt like breathing. As they pedaled down Birch Street, they passed Mr. Fletcher, the mailman, sitting on a park bench, chewing on a blade of grass and giggling to himself. Then Mrs. Talbot, who used to yell if your bike came within 3 inches of her lawn, was lying on her front yard in a sun hat, arms and legs spread like she was making grass angels. Sam pumped his brakes. "Okay, that's new." "She hates grass stains," Maggie muttered. More weirdness waited at the town square. A group of older women, normally polite, quiet, cardigan-wearing ladies, were yelling at a pretzel vendor about mustard placement. One of them even tried to flip his cart. Near the gazebo, 2 guys were arm wrestling, red-faced and snarling like dogs. A crowd cheered them on, laughing and throwing dollar bills. It was like Sunny Pines had traded in its small-town normal for something out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare. At school on Monday, things didn't improve. Maggie's homeroom teacher, Mr. Hodges, walked in 10 minutes late with a smoothie in one hand and sunglasses still on. He dropped a stack of papers on his desk, then looked up and grinned. "No homework this week," he said. "Or next week, or maybe ever." The class went wild. Everyone cheered. Papers flew. One kid threw a ruler. Maggie didn't cheer. Neither did Sam, 2 grades up. His science teacher, normally strict about cell phones, asked kids to pull theirs out and take selfies, quote, to capture the energy of learning. One student literally climbed on a desk and dabbed. Nobody stopped him. And everyone had drinks from the new juice bar. At lunch, Sam and Maggie met under their usual tree. "They're all drinking it," Sam said. "Eco squeeze." Maggie nodded. "I saw 3 teachers with the green one. Principal Daniels had a purple one on his desk." Sam tapped his water bottle nervously. "People are different now. It's not just mood. It's like they're fading." "Or switching," Maggie whispered. "Like someone flipped a switch." They sat in silence, watching their classmates laugh and run and shout like summer had come early, even though it was Monday and cloudy and weirdly cold. "Do you think Mr. Quench is doing this?" Sam asked. "Larry Bixby started it," Maggie said. "He was the first one to try the drinks. Now he's giving them away." Sam frowned. "Smoothies don't make people act like zombies." Sam leaned back and stared at the sky. "We need to figure out what's in those drinks." Maggie nodded slowly. "And we need to do it before everyone we know turns into that." She pointed across the playground at their mom, standing by the school fence. She wasn't watching them. She wasn't watching anything. She was just standing there, smiling. That night, dinner was worse. Their dad, usually talkative, barely said a word. He picked at his spaghetti like it was made of nails. His eyes kept drifting toward the hallway, like something was calling to him. Mrs. Rivera didn't cook. Again. Just heated up a frozen pizza and said, "Isn't it so much easier this way?" Halfway through the meal, she stood up and left the room. Sam followed her. She went into the garage and came out holding a small cooler. Inside were 3 drinks, glowing, sealed with metal caps, blue, green, red. She opened the red one, took a sip. Her whole body shuddered like she'd swallowed lightning. Sam backed up. She didn't even see him. She just floated back to the living room and turned the TV back on. Maggie found Sam sitting on the stairs, pale-faced. "They're hooked," he said quietly. "She's drinking it now, too." Maggie didn't answer. She was holding something in her hand, one of the bottle caps. It had a tiny symbol on it, etched in the metal, a spiral made of thorns. She showed Sam. He traced it with his finger and felt a small pulse, like the metal was still alive. He dropped it. They both watched it roll under the fridge. Neither moved to get it. That night, Sam had dreams. He was in a burning gymnasium. Everyone he knew was there, but they were on fire and laughing. Coach Tuck was screaming at him through a megaphone that sprayed fire instead of sound. In the dream, Mr. Quench stood in the center of it all, holding a glass. "Thirsty?" he asked. Sam woke up soaked in sweat. His window was open, but he hadn't opened it. On his windowsill was a glass of blue juice, full, untouched. He kicked it over. The liquid hit the floor and hissed like it was alive. The next morning, the town was different again. Smiles were wider, eyes brighter, but underneath, everything felt wrong. A man was screaming at a lamppost for looking at him funny. 2 teenagers got into a fistfight at the library over a phone charger. A raccoon was found painted gold on someone's porch. Chaos and calm, side by side. Sam and Maggie sat on the curb outside the general store, watching people pass by like they were in a parade of personalities that weren't theirs. Then they saw it. A man in a gray suit walking like he was half asleep. In his hand, he held a cup, half full. He drank. His shoulders relaxed. He smiled. And then very slowly, he poured the last sip onto the sidewalk. It steamed, then fizzled, then disappeared. Sam leaned over and touched the spot. It was ice cold. That night, they made a pact. No more waiting, no more watching. They would break into EcoSqueeze, find out what was really in the drinks, and figure out how to stop Mr. Quench before the whole town stopped being themselves forever. Chapter 4. The casino lights spun like pinwheels in a windstorm. Red, green, gold, coins clattered in machines like distant thunder. The air was thick with smoke and stale perfume, but Mrs. Draper didn't care. She was in her element. Her fingers moved with machine precision. Tap, pull, slide, tap again. Her lipstick was smudged, her hair undone. Her floral blouse clung to her back with sweat. The screen blinked. You lose. Again. Mrs. Draper didn't blink. She slipped in another token. Not a pause, not a word. The machine spun. You lose. She growled softly. Not like a person, like an animal guarding a meal. A man approached, maybe a security guard, maybe just some guy in a tie who still believed in rules. "Ma'am, I think it's time you cashed out." Wrong move. Mrs. Draper turned slowly. Her eyes were green, not metaphorically, literally green, pale jade glowing faintly in the dim light. The man stepped back. Sorry, I just thought. She stood, every joint popping like cracking twigs. Her smile was a jagged crescent of teeth. "Do I look done to you?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny glass vial, barely the size of a thumb. Inside swirling green liquid, the last drops of greed tea. She unscrewed the cap, tipped it back, and swallowed. Her eyes flared. The slot machines around her whirred and sparked, screens glitching. Coins spilled from one like a miniature avalanche. A woman shrieked, backing away. Draper grinned wider. "That's better." She grabbed a plastic bucket and began scooping coins off the floor, cackling like a kid in a candy store. The security guard called for backup. Mrs. Draper didn't care. She was the jackpot now. Elsewhere, inside EcoSqueeze, Mr. Quench raised an eyebrow as the green jar behind him pulsed once, just once, then dimmed. He chuckled, pulling a new label from his drawer. Madeline Draper, Greed, Phase 2. Then he whispered, "More, Miss Draper. Take more. Give me what's left." Coach Tuck stood in the empty gym, bathed in orange light from the setting sun. He didn't work here anymore, not officially. He'd been asked to take a leave after the incident with the dodgeball, and the water fountain, and the police. But no one had changed the backdoor code. He stood at the center of the basketball court, eyes closed, breathing slow. Inhale. Exhale. Feel the burn. His hand reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a red glass vial. No label, no markings. Inside, a fizzing, angry liquid roiled like living lava. He uncorked it. The smell hit him like pepper spray, sweaty metal, battery acid, and something like smoke. Tuck didn't hesitate. He drank. The transformation was instant. His muscles tightened, blood surged through his veins like jet fuel, his vision sharpened, colors too vivid, edges too sharp. Every creak in the bleachers sounded like a scream. The gym roared around him even though it was empty. Every old humiliation, every insult from students, every laugh from colleagues, it all came rushing back in fire. He screamed, not words, just pure hot noise. Then he moved. He ripped a bench off the floor and hurled it across the court. It splintered against the far wall, metal screeching. The basketball rack was next, flipped, balls bouncing in wild directions. He tore down banners, punched lockers, slammed his fists into the wall until his knuckles bled. Sweat dripped from his face. His shirt stuck to his back, but he didn't stop. He was powerful again, alive, not forgotten, not soft, not weak. Then a creak behind him. A janitor, thin, scared, holding a mop. Coach Tuck? The man stammered. You're not supposed to be here. I have to call. Tuck turned slowly. His pupils were red. He smiled with too many teeth. You gonna stop me, mop boy? The janitor backed up. No, I just... Tuck moved like a bullet, shoved the mop from his hands and slammed it against the wall, splintering it. Then he walked past the man, voice low and dangerous. Next time, knock. Somewhere else in the dark cellar of EcoSqueeze, Mr. Quench watched a monitor flicker to life. Black and white security footage. Coach Tuck, destroying, snarling, thriving. Quench whispered, amused, "That's the spirit." He turned to the glowing red jar labeled Leonard Tuck, Wrath, Boil Phase. He gave it a little shake. The liquid inside vibrated. Chapter 5. The sign said open, but the shop was empty. No customers, no music, not even Mr. Quench behind the counter. Just a dim green glow from the hanging lanterns and that strange heavy scent, citrus and something bitter, like lemon peel and burned sugar. Sam and Maggie stood frozen just inside the doorway, both holding their breath. "This feels like a trap," Sam whispered. Maggie's eyes flicked around. "I don't care. We need to see that menu." The chalkboard wall behind the counter was massive, black, slightly glossy, taking up nearly the entire back of the shop. Swirling green handwriting danced across its surface in long, loopy script. And the names on it, they weren't normal smoothie names. No Strawberry Slam or Superfruit Sunrise. Instead, the board read like something out of a medieval spell book. The Menu of Sin. Crafted for balance, tailored for control. Wrath Detox, for boiling tempers and broken remotes. Gluttony Flush, when one cookie is never enough. Sloth Spritzer, wake up and move, you lazy bones. Greed Purifier, you can't take it with you. Lust Redux, for crushes that burn a bit too hot. Envy Eliminator, because you're better than them, right? Pride Melter, perfect for those who are never wrong. Each entry had a subtitle, a little wink of sarcasm, like the drinks were toying with you, a joke wrapped around a trap. Maggie stepped closer. "These are the 7 deadly sins." "What?" Sam asked. "You know, from the Bible, or maybe Dante. Pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, lust." He gave her a look. "You got all that from TikTok or church?" "Books, genius," she muttered. They scanned the chalkboard again. At the very bottom, a new entry was scrawled in red chalk. New. Ruin. Limited batch. For those who've tried everything else and still aren't whole. Sam stepped back. Okay, that's bad. Yeah, Maggie said, like final boss bad. Suddenly, a small noise echoed from the back room. A soft clink, like glass tapping wood. They ducked behind the nearest counter just as a shadow passed in front of the curtain in the rear hallway. Someone was coming. Maggie hissed, "Go, now!" They crawled low, ducking between crates and beneath a bar table, finally squeezing out through the side exit into the alley. The door slammed softly behind them, and they bolted halfway down the alley before they stopped to breathe. Sam clutched his chest. Okay, let's never do that again. Maggie leaned against the wall, wide-eyed. Did you see that last drink? Ruin! That's not even a sin. That's like the result of sin. He nodded, like he's selling breakdowns, personalized. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sam muttered, "Why make a drink for each sin? Why name them at all?" Maggie thought for a second, her voice low. Because he's not curing anything. He's labeling people, bottling up what's wrong with them, selling it back to them like it's medicine. Later that night, they did some research on Maggie's laptop. They found a dozen juice bar websites. None of them looked like EcoSqueeze. Then they started looking up the 7 deadly sins. Maggie found a page from an old theology book scanned online. The 7 vices are not just temptations, they are doorways. Left unchecked, each leads to deeper decay. Wrath becomes violence. Envy becomes sabotage. Pride becomes ruin. They do not vanish when resisted. They shift. They collect. Sam read the quote 3 times. They collect. Maggie clicked over to her notes. Quench isn't removing these feelings. He's harvesting them. Which means what? He's feeding on them? Sam opened his sketchpad and started writing. Sins equal raw ingredients. Drinks equals draw out sin. Last sip equals most powerful part. He collects what's left equals the backwash. He drew a circle, then an arrow out, then a jar. Collect, refine, reuse. He's not selling smoothies, Sam said. He's extracting what he wants. Wrath, lust, greed, all of it. Maggie leaned back. And calling it a health drink, that's messed up. Think the townspeople know? No way. They think he's healing them. Yeah, Sam said. He's healing them by bottling up their worst parts and letting someone else drink the consequences. The next morning, Maggie convinced their mom to let them do errands on their own. Really, they were going on a stakeout. They camped across the street from EcoSqueeze, binoculars hidden in a lunchbox, notepad ready. One by one, they watched people enter and exit. First, Mr. Delaney, the plumber, came out grinning, chugging something thick and yellow. Then Mrs. Roth, who owned the candle shop. She had a deep purple smoothie, and her mascara was running like she'd just been crying. Sam whispered, "That's Sloth. It's the same one Larry Bixby had." "She doesn't even look happy," Maggie said. "More like dazed." Time ticked by. Coach Tuck showed up next. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He walked in twitching and scowling. He came out smiling, sort of. But his fists were clenched, and the red drinks in his hand were practically glowing. Sam scribbled, "Tuck, rage, confirmed." Then, something even stranger. Mrs. Draper, the bingo lady, walked in empty-handed. She came out with 2 drinks, green and gold, and handed one off to a man in a car that's pulled up alongside her. "Who's that?" Maggie asked. No idea, Sam muttered. But she's distributing. That's not smoothies. That's dealing. At dinner, their dad was different again. He wasn't zoned out like Mom. He was irritated, twitchy, kept tapping his fork like a metronome. When he finally spoke, it was sharp. Can we please go 5 minutes without someone chewing with their mouth open? No one had been chewing. Mrs. Rivera glanced at him, confused. Sam leaned toward Maggie. He's starting. She nodded slowly. Which sin? Pride? Sam guessed. Or wrath? Maybe both. Mrs. Rivera stood up to get a napkin. As she walked away, Sam noticed her hand shaking. Her fingers were green-stained. She'd had one of Quench's drinks that day, probably envy. Back in their room, Sam looked at the list he'd been making. Wrath detox, Coach Tuck. Greed purifier, Mrs. Draper. Lust redux, Larry Bixby. Sloth spritzer, Principal Daniels. Envy eliminator, Mom? Gluttony flush? Question marks. Who's gluttony? Sam asked. Maggie thought, maybe the diner guy or that baker lady who's been hoarding croissants behind the counter. Sam circled the last one. Pride melter. Dad? Then he wrote, ruin, unknown, dangerous. Final stage? They sat in silence again, the weight of it all pressing in. Sam finally spoke. We need proof. Real proof. Maggie nodded. We need to get inside. Deeper. See what he's hiding behind that counter. Sam looked at her, eyes steady. Then tomorrow night, we sneak in. Maggie stared at the spiral symbol they'd found etched into the bottle cap. It looked like it had grown deeper overnight. We've got to take a look at that shop. I think we need your camcorder. Chapter 6. There were always the regulars. Every town had them. The folks who seemed to drift from place to place like leaves in a lazy wind. You'd see them at the diner before the sun came up, at the post office before it opened, at the gas station loitering, watching, waiting. In Sunny Pines, they were the kind of people you learn not to ask too many questions about. Mr. Quench liked those people best. Late one Thursday night, long after the last customer had left and the chalkboard signs had been wiped clean, the lights inside EcoSqueeze flickered back on, but the front door stayed locked. From the alley, a shape emerged, thin, twitchy. He scratched his neck like he was covered in ants. His hoodie was soaked with sweat, even though it was barely 60 degrees out. Coach Tuck. Once the gym teacher at Sunny Pines Middle, he'd been suspended after a screaming meltdown during dodgeball. Now he spent his time pacing outside the high school fence and muttering at trash cans. Tonight, his muttering had stopped. Tonight, he had a destination. He knocked once, then twice. The door opened exactly 2 inches. Coach Tuck slid inside. Another shape arrived next. Mrs. Draper, who used to run bingo nights at the rec center until she was banned for flipping a table and accusing the game master of rigging the numbers. Then came Mr. Eves, the shady real estate guy who'd been caught stealing welcome mats off porches. One by one, they entered. Inside, the air was heavier, thicker. The sweet citrus smell from daytime had curdled into something sharper, like sour cherries and melted plastic. Mr. Quench stood behind the counter, dressed in the same crisp vest and white sleeves. But his hair was undone, hanging in oily strands across his forehead. His smile was still warm, his eyes still bright. But his pupils, they were gone. His eyes were pure glass blue, like frozen lakes with no bottom. "Welcome, my faithful few," he cooed, voice syrupy. Back for your nightly dose of perspective, are we? Coach Tuck wiped his nose on his sleeve and nodded, twitching. Ran out last night. I need more. Mrs. Draper's hands were shaking. I was doing fine today, but then I saw a scratch ticket at the gas station and poof, I almost fell off the wagon. Give me the green tea. Mr. Quench chuckled. You mean greed tea. Very potent, very rare. He reached under the counter and produced a small frosted vial, no bigger than a lipstick tube. Inside was a swirling green liquid that pulsed faintly. Mrs. Draper snatched it from him, unscrewed the cap, and took a deep whiff. Her eyes rolled back in bliss. That's the stuff, she whispered. Oh, that's the stuff. Of course it is, Quench said smoothly. You gave me such good backwash last week. I always reward loyalty. Coach Chuck shuffled forward, his voice raspy. I need the red one again. That rage blast. Makes me feel like a kid again, like I could punch through walls. Quench's smile widened. Yes, well, I believe you actually did last time, Coach. He slid over a red vial with a flick of his finger. Tuck snatched it like it might disappear. Mr. Eves leaned in next, hunched and sniffing. Got any of that envy shot? The last batch made me feel 10 feet tall, like nobody else mattered. I was flying. Quench said, selecting a swirling yellow and black mixture. Very limited edition. But you, Mr. Eves, have proven most useful. Mr. Eves' lips curled into a sick little smile. Behind the counter, the wall of glowing jars shimmered in the dim light. All of them were marked with initials. LB, CT, MD, AF. And filled with sloshing toxic colors. Some buzzed faintly. Others emitted a soft, whispering hiss. This was Mr. Quench's true inventory. Not fruit, not powders, but vices. Bottled, distilled, and transformed into powerful, addictive poisons. The others didn't know what they were drinking, but these clients, they did, and they didn't care. While all that unfolded inside EcoSqueeze, Maggie Rivera crouched on the rooftop across the alley, her eye to her brother Jake's old camcorder. She'd followed Coach Tuck there on a hunch. He'd been acting stranger than usual lately. Her dad always said Tuck had a short fuse, but now he looked ready to ignite. Maggie's fingers trembled as she zoomed in through a cracked side window. She couldn't hear anything, but she could see. The glowing bottles, the creepy customers, and most of all, Mr. Quench. She zoomed tighter on his face. The smile never moved, but his eyes, they shifted sharply. They flicked to the side window, right at her. Maggie gasped and dropped the camcorder. It clattered across the shingles and skidded off the roof. She lunged, nearly going over the edge, but the camera was gone. Down below, the alley was empty. No Tuck, no Draper, no Quench, no anything. She gulped and slowly climbed back down the rusty fire escape, her knees wobbly. Chapter 7. Whoa! Maggie tumbled forward, hit her elbow, and lost her grip on the ladder. She tried to grab the vertical strut, but it slipped beneath her hand. Her feet flew out from under her, and she went sliding off the last step. She landed hard on the ground behind the building with a thud, dust kicking up around her. Her legs tangled. Her backpack flew open. The binoculars bounced once, twice, then skidded to a stop in the dirt. Maggie lay on her back, dazed. The sky above was glowing orange, and the setting sun stabbed her eyes like needles. She blinked, trying to sit up. Then, a shadow fell over her. Someone or something was standing between her and the sun. Maggie's breath caught. Her first thought was Mr. Quench. She imagined him towering over her with that horrible corn kernel smile, those two blue eyes burning down into her soul. She scrambled backward, but her foot caught on her backpack. "Stay back!" she yelled, voice cracking. The figure didn't move. Then a voice, deep, steady, calm, cut through the light. "Maggie Rivera," it said. "I know you, and you know me." Maggie froze. "I think," the voice continued, "we should leave here right away." She shielded her eyes. Who are you?" "Give me your hand," the voice said. The light softened just enough for her to see a figure standing in the golden sun, tall, long hair, a carved walking stick in one hand. Gray Elk, the museum guy. She blinked again. He seemed to glow, like the sun had crowned him with firelight. "Give me your hand," he said again. Maggie reached up. His hand was rough and warm, like bark warmed by the sun. As he helped her up, the dust swirled and the air cooled. "You're Gray Elk," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Caretaker of the old things, friend of children, enemy of things that slither in the cracks." Maggie didn't understand what that meant, but she nodded anyway. They stood in the alley for a moment, the last light of the day soaking the pavement. "I think," Gray Elk said, "there's something you must see." "See?" Maggie asked. "It's the perfect time," he said, "before the sun finishes setting." He looked toward the west where the sky was turning from gold to violet. "Do you know where Rock Spring is?" Maggie nodded. Everyone in Sunny Pines did. It was a field trip destination every April. Mostly rocks, mostly bugs. Not exactly a hot spot. "Meet me there," Gray Elk said. "Bring your brother. You've seen too much not to understand." "What's there?" Maggie asked. "Answers," he said, "and warnings." Then he turned and walked away, his walking stick tapping softly against the ground, vanishing like a dream as he disappeared around the corner. Maggie found Jake behind the grocery store, playing with a paperclip and a half-smashed vending machine. She grabbed his shoulder. "We're going, now." Hi to you too?" "Rock Spring. Gray Elk told me. We've got 20 minutes. Jake blinked. "Wait, Gray Elk? Like Museum Gandalf? That guy?" "Get your bike," she said. "We'll talk on the way." They pedaled hard. The sun was sinking fast now, casting long orange shadows over the hills as they rode past the edge of town, past the creek, past the no littering sign half buried in weeds. The spring sat in a quiet clearing, surrounded by low trees and wild grass. The water trickled out of a crack in a mossy rock and flowed into a small pool. Gray Elk was already waiting, leaning against a tree like he'd been there all day. "Come," he said without preamble. He pushed aside a curtain of thorny bushes and ducked into the woods. The kids followed, stepping over roots, swatting gnats. The path was barely visible, just a faint trail of worn earth winding between trees. After a few minutes, the forest thinned. The air grew still. Even the crickets stopped chirping. Then they saw it. The rock wall rose before them like a forgotten tombstone, tall, dark, cracked in places. At first, it looked like any other cliff, but then they got closer. Carvings, dozens of them, hundreds. Twisted, unnatural figures were etched into the stone. Long arms, sharp fingers, hollow, screaming mouths. Some had eyes, some had none. Spirals surrounded them, burned deep into the rock, alongside jagged lightning bolts and slashes that looked like claw marks from the inside out. Maggie reached out. Her fingers stopped just inches from the stone. She felt it. A pulse, like a heartbeat trapped in rock. She yanked her hand back. Jake's eyes locked on a towering figure in the center. It stood above the others. Its face was a skull, its head had antlers, and its body, roots. Roots that stretched down into the stone. "I don't think these were for decoration," Jake whispered. Gray Elk nodded solemnly. "These are warnings," he said. A breeze cut through the trees, cold, unnatural. And for just a moment, the eyes of the carving seemed to grow deeper, like something was watching from behind the rock. Gray Elk spoke, his voice low. "This is an ancient place, older than the town, older than the trees. People have lived here for tens of thousands of years. They knew things." He stepped closer to the stone, placing a hand on the largest spiral. "This land is generous. The ground is fertile. The water is clean. But that kind of abundance," he looked at them, "it draws things. Things that don't give. Things that only take." Maggie's throat was dry. "Like demons?" Gray Elk didn't answer directly. Instead, he pointed to the spring down the hill. "The water comes from inside the rock. The elders say it cleanses, it calms, it keeps the spirit beneath the cliff asleep." Jake looked up at the carvings again. "The thing in there, is it waking up?" Gray Elk's jaw tightened. "I don't know," he said, "but something in town has changed. Something not from here, not in the books, not in the stories." Maggie looked at the ground, her voice trembling. "Quench," she whispered. Gray Elk turned to her. "You know this name." She nodded. "He's the one behind the drinks, the smoothies. He makes people different, numb or angry, or like they're not themselves." Jake added, "He collects what's left in the cup, the backwash. We think he's keeping it, using it. It's full of emotions, bad ones." Gray Elk frowned. "Liquid," he said. "Of course. Liquid that does not come from the earth. Liquid that carries intent." He placed his hand against the rock once more. "I come here to read the stone, to feel what stirs beneath. But the messages, they're changing, clouded." He turned to them, eyes serious. "I need you to tell me everything you know, every flavor, every drink, every person who has changed." Maggie and Jake looked at each other. Then they began to talk. And the sun, it finally disappeared beyond the trees. Chapter 8. Before Eco Squeeze, Larry Bixby was just a quiet kid who sat alone at lunch and played too much retro baseball on his phone. Now, he smiled too wide, talked too soft, and had a little red cooler he dragged behind him like a pet. Inside, lemonade, or so he said. But something in Larry had changed, and his neighbors were starting to notice. The Mortgage Mischief. Mrs. Smith was 76 years old, wore pink sun visors, even on rainy days, and had exactly one joy left in life: the hydrangeas in her front yard. Well, hydrangeas and paying bills early. Every month, on the 3rd, she'd write a check for her mortgage, seal it in a pink envelope, and march it to the curbside mailbox like clockwork. Larry watched from across the street. Watched, waited, and when her front door finally closed, he smiled. That same stretched, lopsided grin he wore now when things were about to get messy. He darted across the road, opened her mailbox, and snatched the envelope. By the time Mrs. Smith realized the payment never arrived, the bank had already sent a final notice. Her house was almost foreclosed. She cried on the porch for an hour. Larry watched from the sidewalk, sipping lemonade. He'd never felt so alive. The X-Lax Incident. It was a hot day, the kind where even the birds don't want to move. Someone had parked a car outside the park, a black sedan, windows cracked, and in the back seat, a panting golden retriever. Larry walked past it once, twice. The third time, he stopped. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box of chocolates, ribbons and all. A little card was taped to the top. "For a good dog." Inside, 3 full bars of chocolate loaded with X-Lax. He slipped the box through the window crack, smiling like it was the sweetest gift in the world. Then he sat across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, the dog started howling, then pacing, then it started. Let's just say it was everywhere. By the time the owner came back, the car looked like a chocolate blender had exploded from the inside. The man screamed, the dog barked, neighbors gathered, and Larry, he just walked away, whistling the theme to the Sandlot. The Fire Ant Flagpole. At Sunny Pines Elementary, a flagpole stood at the center of the courtyard. Larry knew every inch of that campus from years of recess solitude, which meant he also knew where the fire ant colony lived, deep under the pine tree near the fence. One evening after dark, Larry returned to the school with a pair of gardening gloves, a bucket, and a funnel. In 20 minutes flat, he had a bucket full of furious fire ants. With practiced care, he unscrewed the base plate of the flagpole, tipped the ants inside, and replaced the cover. The next morning, during the Pledge of Allegiance, Principal Daniels yanked the rope, and fire ants erupted from the base like lava with legs. 2 kids screamed. 1 teacher fainted. Daniels fell backward into the mulch and got stung 7 times on the nose. The school was evacuated. Larry watched from the fence, sipping his lemonade. "Oops," he said. The Glue Groceries. Mrs. Kim was everyone's favorite neighbor. She made pumpkin bread year-round, gave out full-sized candy bars on Halloween, and always had a bowl of mints by the door. Which made her Larry's next target. He snuck onto her porch early Saturday morning just before the town farmers market opened. Using a little bottle of industrial-strength epoxy, he carefully glued all 5 of her canvas grocery bags to her wooden porch swing. Then he waited in the bushes. When Mrs. Kim came out, humming to herself, she grabbed the first bag. Nothing. She pulled harder. Still stuck. She crouched down, and that's when the porch swing snapped forward and launched the bags and poor Mrs. Kim across the lawn in a heap of fresh tomatoes and bruised pride. Larry had to clamp a hand over his mouth to keep from laughing too loud, but tears still rolled down his cheeks from the joy. The Birdseed Blizzard. Sunny Pines had a statue in the town square, a bronze eagle mid-flight, wings spread majestically. Larry hated it. It was too proud, too shiny, too unbroken. So he climbed it at 3 a.m. with 3 jumbo bags of birdseed and a small canister of cooking oil. He smeared the eagle in oil from beak to talon, then dumped the birdseed across its wings and the surrounding brickwork. By dawn, the square was filled with hundreds of pigeons, crows, and at least 2 confused seagulls. People screamed, birds pooped. 1 tourist got pecked on the forehead trying to take a selfie. The mayor declared it a mild public health crisis. Larry just giggled from his porch swing, a straw between his lips, sipping slowly from his cup of golden lemonade. The more chaos he caused, the brighter his eyes got, as if someone else was feeding on the trouble. And Larry, he couldn't stop, didn't want to stop, because every prank, every disaster made him feel more alive than he'd ever felt before. The next morning, chaos bloomed like weeds. Coach Tuck punched a delivery truck driver in the mouth for parking too close to his mailbox. Mrs. Draper was caught at the casino out of town screaming at a security guard after losing 10 straight games on a penny slot. Mr. Eves was accused of setting fire to a rival real estate sign, and when questioned, he simply said, "He deserved it." Maggie and Jake watched the news from their breakfast table in stunned silence. 3 stories, 1 day, all of them tied to people they'd seen at EcoSqueeze. Jake glanced at his sister. "We have to tell someone." Maggie shook her head. "Who? Mom and Dad are acting like zombies. Mr. Quench has half the town under some spell. Nobody's going to believe us." He stood. "Then we stop them ourselves." She raised an eyebrow. "You got a plan?" He smirked. "Kind of." That afternoon, Jake followed Mr. Eves. He watched him sneak into the back of EcoSqueeze through the alley. 10 minutes later, Eves came back out, pocketing something small and shiny. He was grinning, not the happy kind of grin, but the kind a snake might wear. Jake snapped 3 photos. Maggie followed Mrs. Draper, who left town again that evening, headed straight for the casino. She was muttering to herself, shaking, gripping her steering wheel like it might fly away. Maggie spotted a tiny green vial in her cup holder. Another picture. Proof. But the worst was Coach Tuck. He cornered a kid at the bike rack outside the high school, accusing him of stealing a basketball. The kid screamed. Tuck raised his fist and froze. Maggie whistled from the sidewalk. "Hey, Coach, chill out." He turned slowly, red-faced, breathing like a bull. His knuckles were white. She smiled nervously and waved. Coach Tuck growled something under his breath, then stormed off down the block, muttering and twitching again. Jake jogged up beside her. "Are you crazy?" "Had to do something." They walked home fast, eyes scanning every alley. The juice bar was changing people, not just calming them, controlling them, giving them what they wanted most, but at a price. Jake flipped through the photos on his camera. "He's collecting their sins," he said, "bottling up the worst parts of people, feeding it back to them in little hits, like a drug dealer, but worse." Maggie nodded. "And the more they drink, the more favors they owe him. It's not about the juice. It's about owning them." She glanced toward the dark outline of the shop down the street. "Mr. Quench doesn't just run a juice bar," she whispered. Jake's eyes narrowed. "He runs the whole town now." Inside EcoSqueeze, Mr. Quench stood alone behind the counter, polishing a flask filled with liquid black as tar. He held it up to the light. It shimmered. Then he sniffed it. "Ah," he whispered. "Pride, my favorite flavor." He slipped it into a padded case beside the others. Lust, wrath, gluttony, greed, envy, sloth. Only one slot remained empty, the bottle labeled ruin. He smiled. "Soon." Chapter 9. At first, they were just pranks. Mild, strange, annoying. The kind of things people shrugged off or blamed on bored teenagers. A rock through a bakery window, doorknobs glued shut at the library, spray-painted smiley faces on the town statue. And then they started happening every day. And they got worse, way worse. The week started with the garden gnome incident. Old Mr. Claiborne, who kept 57 identical gnomes in his yard, woke up to find them all headless. Not smashed, removed, neatly, precisely, like someone had unscrewed their little ceramic necks. In their place were tiny bottles, each filled with glittering blue or green liquid. Sam and Maggie saw the police collect them. One officer touched the inside of a bottle with a cotton swab and immediately threw up on his shoes. That was Monday. By Wednesday, the Cooper family's garage was on fire. Neighbors said they saw Coach Tuck standing on the sidewalk across the street, holding a red cup and laughing to himself. But when the fire truck arrived, he was gone. The fire chief blamed faulty wiring. Sam and Maggie didn't buy it. The Coopers had just gotten a brand new electrical box. And Coach Tuck? He'd been twishing around town with eyes like live coals all week. Thursday brought the glass storm. That's what people started calling it anyway. Just after 3 p.m., every single window on Main Street, from Barrow's Hardware to the Sunny Diner, shattered. All at once. Boom! Glass flew like glitter in a hurricane. The only people outside were Mrs. Draper and 3 middle schoolers with dazed eyes and matching smoothies. They didn't flinch. They didn't run. They just stood there, smiling, even as glass rained down around them. By Friday, the town was on edge. And then the worst thing happened. Police Chief Rowland went missing. No note, no call. His cruiser was found idling outside the old train station. Empty, door open. Smoothie cup in the front seat. Lid off. Nothing inside. No fingerprints. Just teeth marks on the straw. The kind that didn't look human. Sam and Maggie sat in their room that night, door locked, windows shut. "We have to leave," Maggie whispered. "Where?" Sam asked. "Anywhere. This town is cursed." Sam tapped his notebook. "No, not cursed. Controlled." He flipped it open to a page he'd labeled The Favors. A timeline, an ever-growing list of random acts that weren't random at all. Larry Bixby, delivered note to Mrs. Smith. Next day, her car was totaled. Coach Tuck screamed at the mailman. That night, post office was robbed. Mrs. Draper accidentally left gate open at animal shelter. 5 dogs escaped. Mr. Eves lit a bonfire in someone's front yard. No one reported it. Everyone watched. Sam underlined the words, one small favor, then another, then chaos. Maggie paced the room. "They don't even remember doing it," she said. "It's like Quench flips a switch in their brain." Sam looked up, and they're proud of it. They think they're helping. Helping who? He didn't answer. They both knew the truth. The next day, Gray Elk showed up outside the museum for the first time in weeks. He didn't speak, didn't unlock the door, just sat on the wooden bench, eyes on the street, watching people pass like he was looking through them. Maggie and Sam approached cautiously. He didn't move. "Sir?" Maggie asked. "Can we ask you something?" Still nothing. She tried again. "You said the spring was a sacred place, that it protected something." Gray Elk didn't look at them, but he finally spoke. "He's collecting." Sam's stomach dropped. "Quench?" Gray Elk nodded once. "He's almost ready." "For what?" The old man turned to them. His eyes were like stones, dark, heavy, unmoved by time. "When the jar is full, it tips." Maggie sat down beside him. "What's in the jar?" Gray Elk looked at the sky. "Sin." That night, the power flickered across half the town. Streetlights buzzed. Phones died. People walked around like ghosts, some laughing too loudly, some whispering to no one. The kids stayed in, eyes wide, waiting for something. It came at 2:13 a.m. A loudspeaker, static, then a distorted voice, Quench's voice, boomed through the town's emergency siren system. "Sunny Pines, isn't it wonderful to feel so free?" The message repeated, again and again, until sunrise. Saturday morning, Maggie biked downtown alone to see the damage. There were symbols painted on the pavement, spirals, lightning bolts, claw marks. People had written things on the windows in lipstick and chalk. "The juice is truth. Drink your way out. I feel alive. Quench saves." The air was thick with euphoria and fear, a wild blend of laughter and screams. In front of EcoSqueeze, a new sign had been posted. "Limited batch now available. Ruin. Don't just fix yourself, finish yourself." Maggie stared at it until her stomach turned. Then she biked home as fast as she could. She found Sam on the porch holding something, a crumpled piece of paper with her name on it. "What's that?" she asked. Sam's voice shook. It was on the porch. No idea how." He unfolded it. The message was printed in perfectly neat forest green script. "Dear Maggie, you've been selected for a very special role. Meet me tonight, alone, and I'll make you whole. Mr. Quench." Maggie's knees went weak. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They were already too deep, and whatever came next, the town might not survive it. Chapter 10. It started with music. Faint at first, a broken, warbling melody drifting on the wind like a half-forgotten lullaby. Ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding, ding, ding. Jake froze halfway through his cereal. Maggie slowly sat her book down. They looked at each other. "You hear that?" Jake asked. Maggie stood and walked to the porch, her bare feet silent on the floorboards. The sound got louder, closer. Outside, the sun was just beginning to dip below the treetops, casting the street in long gold and purple shadows. That's when they saw it, the truck. It rumbled up Birch Street like some rusted-out ghost, parts rattling, tires squealing. An old speaker bolted to the roof playing warped ice cream truck music that sounded like it had been recorded underwater during a panic attack. The vehicle looked like a Frankenstein mashup, part milk truck, part food truck, part something that shouldn't exist. Faded white with peeling blue letters that once said Dairy Delight, but now just read Die Deli. At the rear was a massive tank, bolted down with chains, its metal sides dented and stained. A long hose curled along the side like a sleeping snake. A greasy yellow liquid oozed from one of the valve seals. Maggie's stomach twisted. "Jake, that's not just a truck." "Nope," he whispered. "That's a delivery system." Without another word, they ran for their bikes. The truck didn't stop for stop signs. It didn't slow down for potholes. It creaked and groaned like it hated the road itself. Jake and Maggie stayed close, but far enough behind to stay hidden. The sky darkened with each block they crossed. Streetlights flickered, unsure whether to commit. They turned a corner. The truck rattled straight into the alley behind EcoSqueeze. The creepy music died with a final ding, and the engine clunked into silence. Jake and Maggie dropped their bikes behind a dumpster and crept forward, ducking low behind a stack of broken pallets. The juice bar's back door was wide open. What they saw made them forget to breathe. Chapter 11. Dozens of people milled around the back of the building, adults mostly, but not normal adults. Their eyes were blank, their smiles fixed and glassy. Many of them wore aprons or work shirts. A few still had name tags from places around town: Sunny Diner, Barrow's Hardware, City Office. They were chanting. Low, rhythmic, whispery syllables that sounded like a twisted version of row, row, row your boat. A hose stretched from the EcoSqueeze back door to the tank on the truck. Through the transparent tube, a glowing green sludge pulsed. Jake whispered, "He's loading the backwash." Maggie's face was pale. He's gonna dump it somewhere important. Jake nodded. We have to warn Gray Elk, now. They turned to run and froze. A hand grabbed Maggie's shoulder, another clamped over Jake's mouth. Hey guys, said a voice behind them. Where do you think you're going? Maggie looked up into the face of Larry Bixby. He was smiling wide, eyes twitching, hands sticky with juice, and standing next to him, cracking his knuckles, was Coach Tuck. Well, well, Coach muttered. Looks like we've got a couple of juice critics. Before they could scream, the world went dark. Maggie came to first. Her wrists were tied with thick rope, looped around a rotting fence post near the edge of a rocky bluff. Wind slapped her face and tugged at her hair. The storm clouds above were gathering like vultures. Jake stirred beside her. What happened? You passed out, Maggie said. I did not pass out. You made a sound like a deflating balloon and crumpled like one too. Jake blinked. Fair enough. Below them was a clearing, a bowl of dirt and grass surrounded by gnarled trees. The milk truck sat parked at the center. Its engine still ticked with heat. Around it, cars lined up like a parade. Beat-up sedans, dusty minivans, and 2 black SUVs with no plates. Adults spilled from them like ants, all walking in slow, deliberate unison. A makeshift pile of dirt made a natural podium. Jake's voice cracked. It's like a cult meeting, a juice cult. A voice behind them said, Not a cult, a beginning. Coach Tuck leaned against a twisted pine tree, arms folded. You brats should be honored, he said. You get to see the new world begin. Chapter 12. Larry stepped beside him, his cooler in one hand, a red lemonade jug in the other. You'll have ringside seats to the ceremony, he added. Coach cracked his neck, and when it's over, you'll be the first 2 punished in the new order. New order? Jake spat. You mean dictatorship. Coach smiled like he was proud. Not dictatorship. Discipline, structure, power, and nutrition. You ever read the ingredients in school lunches? Poison. This town's been on the wrong track for years. Mr. Quench, he's got vision. Vision? Maggie shouted. He's poisoning people. No, Larry said. He's curing them, removing their flaws, giving us a clean start. Maggie strained against the rope. By bottling sin and dumping it into a sacred spring? Coach laughed. Ha ha, exactly. Lightning split the sky behind them. Sunny Pines is going to be the first perfect town. No crime, no doubt, no backtalk. Everyone happy, everyone in line. And meddlers like you, gone. The truck's speaker crackled. The warped bell music started again, slow, sick like it was melting. People below began to clap, perfectly in sync. A low hum built in the air, buzzing like insects in your teeth. Then the door at the back of the milk truck creaked open. A foot stepped down. Black shoe, polished. Then another. And then at last Mr. Quench emerged. His hair slicked back, not a strand out of place. His teeth gleamed like wet corn kernels. His blue eyes glowed even in the gloom. He stepped up onto the rise in the ground clearing. The chanting stopped. Silence fell like a hammer. Mr. Quench smiled. My friends, he said, voice echoing across the field. The time has come. You have drank deeply. You have given freely. And now, he raised his hands toward the tank, we deliver the final gift. People around him wept. The hose was uncoiled. It slithered like a living thing across the dirt toward the cliff face at the edge of the spring. Maggie's heart dropped into her stomach. They were going to pour it into the cave, into the ancient place Gray Elk had shown them, into the prison. The backwash would flow, and the thing in the dark would wake up. Quench turned slowly, as if sensing them on the hill. He looked straight at Jake and Maggie, and he smiled. Chapter 13. Thunder rolled across the darkening sky, the clouds swollen with something heavy, something dangerous. Sam and Maggie stood pinned to the old fence, soaked in sweat and fear. The air was thick and electric. Just beyond them, on the flat dirt plain near the mouth of the cave, stood the tight circle of adults. Their eyes were blank, their movements slow and deliberate. The trees swayed. Maggie gasped, "Sam, look!" Their parents were among them, standing shoulder to shoulder with Quench, chanting in a low, eerie rhythm. Behind the circle sat the rusted old milk truck, repurposed into a delivery system of horror. Large black hoses coiled from the tank like snakes, and one of the hypnotized townspeople was jamming the nozzle into the crack in the rock wall. They were preparing to pump the vile, glistening backwash down into the caves, into the place where the demons slept. Quench lifted his arms. "The flood of impurity shall awaken what sleeps below," he boomed. "With this final pour, we summon the vessel of decay." The sky growled, but not with evil. A shadow rose on the hillside, tall, robed, unmoving. Maggie blinked against the wind. "Is that?" "It's him," Sam whispered. "Gray Elk, the protector, like on the petroglyphs." The Indian mystic stood motionless, his cloak rippling. Then slowly he raised an elaborately carved staff above his head. Thunder cracked. The staff came down. The instant it struck the ground, a bolt of lightning tore from the clouds and slammed into the tree beside the milk truck. The world lit up in a blinding white flash. Then, boom! The tree exploded in flame and came crashing down onto the milk truck. The impact knocked the hose loose. The metal tank buckled and burst open like a rotten melon. Backwash spewed everywhere. The smell was unbearable, like sour spit and old sugar. The sludge frothed and hissed. Then the storm broke. Rain poured down in sheets, hammering the earth, turning dirt to mud. The backwash was lifted, spread, carried away in a swirling, hissing flood. It slid down the slope, past the cave entrance, and spilled toward the river. Sam and Maggie watched in stunned silence as the glowing sludge met the fast-moving river water. Hiss! A thick column of steam burst upward. The sickly green liquid boiled and vanished into nothing. Chapter 14. "No!" Mr. Quench howled, his voice warping into a monstrous, anguished roar as the rain pummeled him. His form trembled violently, features melting and morphing grotesquely. His skin dissolved into a sick, gelatinous slime that dripped to the ground in large, bubbling clumps. Sam and Maggie stared, horrified, as the quivering slime creature hissed angrily, glowing eyes glaring at them with searing hatred. "You meddling pests!" Quench gurgled furiously. In a sudden fluid movement, the slime creature slithered toward the cave entrance, its body stretching and thinning impossibly. It squeezed itself through tiny cracks and fissures in the rock wall, oozing into the darkness below. "He's getting away!" Maggie shouted, pointing in alarm. Chief Gray Elk stepped forward calmly, emerging once more from the shadows, his eyes narrowed but confident. "For now, he flees," he said. but the darkness always retreats when exposed to light. As if in agreement, the storm clouds above began to break. Rain slowed to a whisper and stopped entirely. The sky opened. The full moon shone bright and clear over the soaked field. The circle of dazed adults blinked slowly, as though waking from a deep dream. One by one, they recognized their surroundings and their children. "Mom! Dad!" Sam and Maggie cried in unison as they rushed forward and untied them. Their parents pulled them into tight embraces, holding on as if they would never let go again. The other adults began embracing each other, murmuring thanks, disbelief, and relief. Then someone shouted, "Those kids stopped it! They saved us!" Sam and Maggie were suddenly surrounded, hands clapping their shoulders, people hugging them, voices rising with praise and gratitude. Amid the warmth and relief, no one noticed Chief Gray Elk, stepping quietly back toward the trees. He paused just once, glancing at the moonlight reflecting in the puddles, and then slipped silently back into the shadows, vanishing as if he'd never been there. The celebration faded to calm. Sam and Maggie stood with their parents at the edge of the clearing. Their mom kissed Maggie's forehead. Their dad rested a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Let's go home," he said. Together, the two kids walked into the night, arms around their parents, the full moon lighting their way. Behind them, the cave sat silent. But somewhere, far beneath the earth, something still stirred in the dark. Chapter 15. The sky was turning pink as Sam and Maggie coasted down Birch Street, their bikes clattering over the cracks in the sidewalk. The last of the summer light warmed their backs, and for the first time in days, the town of Sunny Pines felt normal again. "That was insane," said Jake, adjusting his backpack as he rolled to a stop. "Do you think he's really gone?" "Gone, maybe," Maggie replied, eyeing the shadows stretching across the street. "But not done. Not with someone like Quench." As they turned the corner, they both slammed on their brakes. There, right on the edge of the sidewalk beneath a maple tree, stood a lemonade stand, and behind it, Larry Bixby. His old gray pack-sack was tucked behind the table, and in its place sat a bright red cooler filled with ice. Two frosty glasses sparkled in the fading sun. Larry smiled. Not his usual half-hearted, sad Larry smile, but a full one, teeth and all. "Hey, you two," he said cheerfully. "Thirsty?" Jake and Maggie exchanged a look. "You've got to be kidding me," Jake muttered. But they stayed frozen there as Larry slid two perfectly chilled glasses toward them. The lemonade looked perfect. "On the house," Larry said, smiling wide.